So 7 stories of connection. I hope you'll be inspired with specific things you can do with your family and friends to prevent problematic pornography use. 1851 in New Orleans, my great-great-grandmother, Agnes LeBaron, was born. And her mother had recently emigrated from England, but her father was an 8th-generation American who had a home in Utah already. So when she was 2 years old, after her father had already gone on to Salt Lake City, she and her mother came west with a group riding in a covered wagon. And one night on their journey, they camped in a country that was infested with wild boars, also known as razorbacks. These were not your cute little free-range pigs. Okay, let me tell you about razorbacks. They can be up to 5 feet long, weigh up to 300 pounds, and they can run up to 35 miles per hour. They have these top and bottom tusks that rub together to keep them sharp. They have a thick layer of skin that's like body armor. They are intelligent, they are easily agitated, and they are ruthless. They will uproot and eat anything they can catch. They destroy vegetation, they degrade watering holes, they can transmit parasitic and bacterial infections to other animals and humans. So just think, terrifying creature of your nightmares, kind of like the ROUSs in Princess Bride, right? Pretty awful. So imagine the concern of 2-year-old Agnes's mother as they camped out in that boar-infested area that night. And what happened later would have been enough to just knock the sleep out of me for days. So in Agnes's words, decades later, she said, "That evening, a wild boar managed to pick me up, or to get into our tent, and picking me up from where I was lying on some quilts, carried me outside. Mother felt in the bed for me, and to her dismay, found that I was not there." So Sarah, her mother, she saw that this razorback was taking her tiny child away, and she ran to the door of the tent, and she started yelling and throwing rocks, and finally terrified that razorback enough to scare it away, and it dropped Agnes. So, and Agnes later said, in an understatement of the year, "That was a close call." So, can you imagine the frantic searching throughout that tent when Sarah's looking for her daughter? Can you imagine that moment when she sees that terrifying creature carrying her child away? That would have ignited a fierceness in me rarely seen. But I also imagine the tenderness as Sarah retrieved her child, pulled her to safety. I imagine her kissing her forehead and her tiny little fingers. I imagine that she probably held her all night long. Pornography can be just as harmful as that wild boar. It is thick-skinned, ruthless. It is powerful. It will uproot and destroy anything that it can catch. But just like Agnes's mother reacted swiftly and intentionally to save her daughter, our efforts can go a long way in preventing the harms of pornography with the people that we love. So where do we start? How about with an old scallywag? Let me explain. When I was dating my husband, we went to visit his grandparents who lived up this tall hill near Big Cottonwood Canyon in this old home. They had a beautiful view of the Salt Lake Valley. There we go. Okay, and they had this tall swing in their backyard that if you got high enough, it made you feel like you were flying over the city. It was amazing. They also had this card table in their kitchen that was full of these candy jars, which they always insisted that we help ourselves to. And in their basement, they had a ping pong table that converted to, or a pool table that converted to ping pong. We loved it. I loved visiting their home, but it wasn't just for the view or the candy or the games. I loved the greetings that I received from Grandpa Van Wagner. To my husband, it would be this bear hug, followed by them both calling each other, "Ye old scallywag," that was their term of endearment. To me, he would give me a hug, and then he would pull back, and he would look me in the eyes with some intensity and say, "Do you know how much we love you?" And then after we married, that turned into, "You know, if Russell hadn't been smart enough to marry you, we would have adopted you anyway." I never saw his grandparents without being reminded how important I was and how loved I was by them. The world is hard on us. It's hard on our kids. It's hard on our loved ones. Every time we leave home, whether physically or through a screen, we run the risk of getting a little beat up. Doesn't it feel good to be warmly greeted? It's like salve to the soul. And I think this is why cats get a bad rap, because dogs will run circles of excitement around you when you get home, and cats act totally indifferent, right? Although I do love our cat. A wise man once said, apologies and warm greetings are the foundation of good relationships. But it's not just the greetings that are important. The things that we focus on in our relationships with others have a lot to do with how connected we feel. So almost a year ago, my husband and I bought a new home with some acreage and beautiful views, and we were so excited to get some animals and grow lots of fruits and veggies and have room for our kids to run around. But the previous owners had left this really impressive flower farm, and with dozens of types of flowers that I had never even heard of. And of course, we intended to keep it alive and thriving, but we were in over our heads. And what made it worse is that we found out that the irrigation pipes had these cracks in it, so it was impossible to water with the existing drip lines. So while we worked on fixing those lines, we bought this giant sprinkler head, we plopped it down in the middle of the garden on a tripod, and then just shot the water out over as broad an area as we could. Genius, right? Well, actually, it turns out when you water everything, then everything grows, especially endless, gigantic weeds. And they would spring up almost overnight, like taller than me, and they just wreaked havoc on our garden. Because when you water the thistles, you risk crowding out the delphiniums or the poppies, right? I'm getting behind on here. Okay. So we have spent hours and hours trying to recover from nurturing all those weeds. There will always be weeds in our lives. Grumpy attitudes, messy bedrooms, too much time on screens. But when we water those things by constantly trying to fix them, we risk crowding out the beautiful flowers, like help with dishes, or a good test score, or a good mood. Constantly correcting our loved ones can lead to resentment and fear, while nurturing the positive builds motivation and self-confidence and trust and connection. And the same is true with technology. Complaining about it can lead our loved ones to feeling like they need to hide it from us. Contrast that with my friend's experience. She said that her relationship with her son improved just by complimenting him on his video game. On hard days, Ralphie Jacobs encourages parents to walk past all the weeds and desperately find one flower to water. Do you think you can do it? So I'd like to take a pop mental quiz with all of you. I'm going to describe a very messy room, and I want to see if you can find something positive about it. This is a poem that I memorized when I was young, and unfortunately, I don't know who the author is, but it goes like this. My sister's bedroom is a mess. Her clothes are everywhere. Her socks are hanging from the light, just like her underwear. There's pizza underneath her desk, left over from a snack. She keeps a mud ball in her bed if robbers should attack. There's gum stuck to her doorknob, glue spilled on the floor. Her room is so full of garbage, you can hardly shut the door. Search far and wide, you'll never find a more disgusting spot. Unless you look in my room, and I'd rather you did not. Okay, so what do you think? Did you find any flowers in that? Maybe having her home is the flower. Or at least if nothing else, she has good intentions with that mud ball, right? Focusing on the positive, though, doesn't mean we have no rules and expectations. Boundaries are essential to our well-being, like we just heard. But I, for one, can spend far less time correcting and far more time connecting. And another important lesson that we learned from our flower garden is that it's never too late to go back and fix our mistakes and try again. Remember the secret garden, or this beautiful fantastic? Both of these stories start with a very neglected garden and a very neglected young woman. And in both cases, dramatic transformations take place that are not unlike what's possible in real life. Another thing that we can do to build connection as a shield against pornography is to create and reinforce community identity and purpose. 7 years ago, I just can't even believe it's been that long, my family and I were looking for something that we could do to spread light and cheer during the Christmas holidays. My kids suggested a lemonade stand until we reminded them that it was winter in Montana. So after a couple seconds of disappointment, one of them got all excited and went, "Oh, I know," and blurted out with her eyes all lit up, "What if we do a hot chocolate stand?" So we did a little brainstorm session, and we decided we would call it Hot Chocolate for Charity. We could set it up on our front porch and at the top of our very conveniently circular driveway so that cars could just drive on through. We would offer a variety of flavors like mint and sugar cookie and pumpkin spice, and we would donate everything to a local charity. Together, we chose the charity. We concocted the recipes, which was very fun. We designed neighborhood signs. We passed out flyers. We set up a patio heater on our porch. We hung lights. And after a couple years, we even designed t-shirts and aprons to go over our winter coats. Our kids have recruited their friends. They've donned Santa hats. They've danced to Christmas music to bring in more customers. And then after each joyful event, we count up the money, we write a check, and we go down to the facility, the charity that we've chosen, and we take a tour to see exactly how our money is going to be spent. Over the years, we have helped with emergency housing, diapers, food, parenting classes. So what started as a love of lemonade stands has grown into something that has become a cherished Christmas tradition that has given our family identity and purpose. Establishing traditions, working together, setting common goals, all of these things work together to create powerful connections, and they're a shield. These things are a shield against pornography. But it doesn't have to be complicated. Our family also likes to do simple things like making each other breakfast in bed on our birthdays, playing Skull King or other games. We pray together. We celebrate getting through the week with family movie night, one of our favorites. When we greet each other warmly, nurture the positive, and develop a sense of common identity and purpose, we are laying a foundation of trust that allows for early intervention and support. So earlier this year, I was sitting among a group of women that I did not know well. And we had recently moved to our new community, and I was looking forward to developing relationships with them. That day, I got a glimpse into the kinds of hearts these women have when one of them stood up and said one of the most courageous things I have ever heard. As she spoke, I found out that she lives in a tiny trailer and suffers from depression. She said, "My therapist and I have been brainstorming ways I can get out and socialize with other people more often. We had the idea that since I have to go to the laundromat every week to do my laundry anyway, what if instead I use that time to visit you and do my laundry in your homes?" She wanted everyone to feel no pressure, but sent her on a clipboard with a calendar so that we could sign up to host her for laundry day. I felt so much love for this woman who I hardly knew. And when the clipboard got to me, I was so touched to see that it was almost completely full. I think that so often we miss making connections with other people because we're afraid to be vulnerable. The perfect children and homes and marriages and bodies that we see on social media can make ours feel like something to be ashamed or embarrassed about. So instead of opening up about stress or worries or mental health problems, we mask it, and then we turn to other unhealthy sources like pornography for solace. What if we all just did laundry at a friend's house? Or in other words, what if we open up to each other about our problems? We became vulnerable with each other and invited connection and compassion and strength. When we admit that we're not perfect, we become a safe place for others to land when they are struggling. Our loved ones need to know that we not only we tolerate weakness, but we also rally around it. And we have plenty of our own. Like Rocky Balboa, he's beat down in the corner of the ring by the Russian. He heard Adrian and his coach and the crowd chanting in the arena. They were all yelling and cheering for him, and that is what he needed to help him get back up and keep fighting, right? We can do that for each other when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. But our loved ones are more likely to open up to us if they know that they can trust us with their hearts. If your kids share who they have a crush on, guard that. Avoid saying unkind things about anybody. Like the Turkish proverb, we all know that whoever gossips to you will gossip about you. Teach your kids that when they see pornography, they can always tell you about it. But be careful, because just like the weeds, if I'm constantly harping on my kids about all kinds of things, are they going to want to tell me about their exposure to pornography and risk disappointing me even more? Instead, apologize when we mess up and make it clear to our loved ones through consistent words and actions that you can always do laundry at my house. But sometimes it's still hard to open up. So look for the signs that something is off in the people that you care about. When my kids were little, we had the best pediatrician. She was gentle and wise and so fun with my kids. She had this light that would turn on when my kids blew on it, and she would use that for looking in their eyes and ears. She could always find butterflies in their ears, which they thought was so cool. Well, one day we were going in for a regular checkup, and she's doing her thing with them, and it started out like any other visit. And she's playing with them, she's checking their heartbeat, she's looking for those butterflies. But while I watched her, I suddenly noticed something that caught me off guard and filled me with compassion. I could distinctly see 2 white, dusty trails left behind from tears falling down her cheeks. And these were the kind of tears that drip in such sorrow that you can't even bring yourself to wipe them away. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but it wasn't my place and definitely not the right time, so I just was extra kind to her. But I'll never know what gave her such sorrow that day, but what it is a reminder to me of is that sometimes the signs are very subtle, that things are not okay with our loved ones. Are they extra irritable lately? Are they spending more time alone than they used to? Are they less interested in things that they used to enjoy? Talk with them, serve them, invite them to spend time with you. A friend of mine, she spends individual time with each of her kids, her 5 kids, every night before they go to bed, whether it's playing a game, reading a story, helping them with homework, or sometimes even just sitting next to them. And even when you're not physically there, there's so much you can do. When I was 15, I went through one of the hardest times of my life. And my sister, Dana, who was away at college at the time, she saw some signs that I was struggling, and so she sent me a package of homemade toffee. I have rarely felt so seen and loved. I'm sure she was busy with school and work, but she saw the signs and acted, and I will be forever grateful for that. And that leads me to my last story. Last March, I spoke at the Salt Lake UCAP conference and told the story of my kids, ages 12 to 17, running a 24-hour marathon. It was an incredibly challenging yet fulfilling experience for them. And now I'd like to tell you the other side of that story. Part of the reason they chose to run that race was because they had just found out that we were moving to another state, and they wanted to make memories with their friends and do this thing that was really important to them before we left. And I was really excited for them, but I was slightly dismayed when I found out that the only weekend they could do it was the same weekend that we were showing our house to potential buyers for the first time. Now, I don't know how moves go with you, but at our home, it was absolute chaos. There were boxes everywhere, half-finished paint projects, and even a scaffolding that we had set up to replace an old junky light fixture. Not exactly the recipe for getting our home show ready, right? On top of that, I don't know how there was going to be teenagers coming in and out of our house every hour for 24 hours during this time. So for a regular race, this would have been no big deal, but this one was different. So, my husband and I dug deep, and we just filled those boxes, and we cleaned and we packed and we fixed that light fixture and we took down that scaffolding. We did everything we could. And then, miraculously, it all came together, and we finished our showing just in time to watch our kids finish their last mile with their friends. Because when you put people first, everything else falls into place. My husband and I ran the block down to the park where our friends had set up a finish line for them, and we got there just in time to see them finish, and we cheered our guts out like nothing else mattered in the world. And it was true. Nothing else matters more than our connections with loved ones, especially when it comes to preventing pornography use. Pornography thrives in isolation. It will creep into your tent in the middle of the night, make you feel ignored when you walk in the door, water all the weeds, paying no attention to the flowers, tell you you don't belong, convince you to avoid eye contact at the laundromat, hide your trail of tears or ignore those of others, and make you feel like all that matters is a clean house. But we're not going to fall for it, right? We're not going to fall for it. Let's hold our loved ones close. Let's greet each other warmly. Let's focus on the positive. Let's build connection through common identity and purpose. Let's be willing to be vulnerable. Let's pay attention to each other's signs of struggle and show up for each other. Those are the real connections that will make the real difference. Thank you.